Don't adjust that station. You have the correct station. That's correct. You got 98.7 KISS FM, and you got the #1 talk show Sunday mornings in the tri-state area. That is.
You know, there are times when we have guests on this show, and it's a special moment. And there are times when it's momentous. And for us right here, it's momentous. And as I introduced him earlier, before the minister arrived, I just want to repeat this again because I think it's a very important thing for people to understand. There's a distinction between the thermometer and the thermostat. And we had this conversation when we were away, and it hit me, it touched me. See, a lot of people can come in the room. The thermometer tells you what the temperature is. Very few people can come in the room and are thermostats that change the temperature. Mm-hmm. There's so much I could say about this brother as a beloved leader of African Americans and also as a beloved friend. But we all know the wonderful work this man has done, and he's going to give us the time to discuss any and everything you and I want to ask, brother, and also the callers. Without further ado, I introduce the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Brother Mtume, thank you. And to all of your listeners, I wish you peace. And to Bob Slade, who is absent this morning, we pray that Almighty God, Allah, will bless you with a speedy recovery so you can get back to these microphones and feed the public as you have been doing for so many years.
Indeed.
I'm honored beyond words to be here with my family at KISS FM.
Well, you know, Minister, before we go deeper into what you see as the vision and the direction for Black America, could you give us your summation of the recent trip to Cuba? And as you explained, the need for Black people in America to globalize and to understand there's a world and that we don't have to depend on people here necessarily in America.
Thank you. In the book of Genesis, Adam, when he was made by God, he was told to eat of all of the fruit of all of these trees except one. Today, we are in the genesis of the birth and the rise of Black people all over the world. We have fed from a tree of good mixed with evil, of lies mixed with truth, and it has poisoned the bloodstream of the Black family, so we are filled with self-hatred and self-destructive behavior. But we are a global people. We are an international people, and there are many trees of knowledge all over the world that we should be willing to at least taste the fruit of. After Katrina, which unmasked the naked racism and ineptitude of government and the non-caring attitude of government toward the suffering of Black people, we decided that since Cuba was only 90 miles from the shores of America, under a blockade for 47 years, with a leader who has withstood over 670 assassination attempts, knowing at any moment that America could attack, Cuba then has been mobilized for 47 years to withstand disaster. There have been Category 5 hurricanes that hit that island, and not one life was lost. So at the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March, which we call the birth of the Millions More movement, we said that we can no longer depend on government to look after us, but we must set up those instrumentalities that would allow us to look out for ourselves. So we wanted a ministry of health, a ministry of education, a ministry of defense, a ministry of foreign affairs, a ministry of science and technology, a ministry of art and culture. And the people that were on that mall agreed that we should set up this type of ministries, gathering the talented tenth that W.E.B. Du Bois talked about, and with a programmatic thrust, work to lift the masses of our people. So as the Ministry of Defense, we wanted to go to Cuba to see how they defended themselves and their people against hurricanes, against natural disaster. And so we went, and Brother James Mtume was one of the 23 that we took, and it was one of the greatest learning experiences that we had. And that is a tree that I believe we all can eat from, and the fruit of that tree will not poison us.
I think one of the minister, one of the things that was absolutely, Brother Pickett, unbelievable when the minister's referring to the hurricane, they moved 1.3 million people. And no one died. And when they broke it down to us how that was done, they know where everyone lives in every house. And if there's anyone indigent, is in a wheelchair, or pregnant, they moved them to different facilities. And those who live on the shoreline, you ready for this? After they get the people out, they go and get their belongings. So, you know, again, Minister, I thank you so much for being part of that. But the globalization, that leads me to another question. Because, you know, we've been in close association, I know how much traveling you do around the world. And many people do not understand what your image is and your relationship with world leaders on the level that it is. Could you elaborate a little more on that? Because you're planning another trip, I understand.
What I would first like to say is what we learned in Cuba, we've documented with a videographer everything that we saw, and we saw much. Every word is being transcribed, and we are bringing from that transcription a document that we desire to share with our brothers and sisters, church leaders, organizational leaders, because disaster is going to strike America. It is written in the Quran that Allah will bring one calamity after another until the enemy is laid low. So Hurricane Katrina is only one, but there are many more to come, and we as suffering people in America and the poor of America must be prepared to save ourselves and our people. So what we learned, we want to share it through churches and organizations to Black and Native American and Chicano families. And we also want to work with city and state government and federal government so that when these disasters strike, as they will, we can make sure that there is not the loss of life, the tremendous loss of property and dislocation that we saw with Hurricane Katrina. Now, as far as the global effect, I want to say to Bob Law and to Viola Plummer and to all of the wonderful brothers and sisters here in New York, Reverend Daughtry and others who helped make the Million Man March such a great success. This was certainly not a one-man show. It took many, many, many wonderful people to turn out nearly 2 million Black men on the Mall, but they thought that there was going to be a disaster of huge proportions, so the army was underground and everybody was ready. The government closed down and the president left the city, but it was the most peaceful demonstration in the history of Black people in America, or white people for that matter. But CNN was there, all the news media was there, so it was an event that was seen around the world. And when the world saw these Black men in this condition of peace and unity, demonstrating love for one another, the outside world saw Black America as hope for them, because they knew that if we united, we could form a political base of power that could change not only domestic policy, but influence foreign policy. So when I went around the world after the Million Man March, we were met with leaders that, literally praised black people in America for such a demonstration. People lined the streets and cheered us from the airports into the cities, and there was no head of state or government that did not receive us with honor. And now the doors to the world are open to us, but we must be prepared now to, when these doors open, to go in and take advantage of the fact that we are an international people, a global people. We are not a minority. We are the majority on the planet, and the whole world is looking to Black America because we grew up in the world leader. We understand them better than anyone outside of America. We get nearly $1 trillion out of this economy, and we are the best educated black people on the earth. But what we need is a knowledge of self that will give us self-love, self-determination, and a desire to do for self. Then the whole world is not our playground, but it is our, I would say, our garden, where we can go and eat the fruit from all of the trees except the one that's in the midst of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Mr. Farrakhan, let me ask you a question about leadership, and certainly your leadership over the last 15 years, especially in organizing the Million Man's March and the Millions More Movement March, I think is an example of the quality of your leadership, as well as the vision of that, the best possible folks coming forward to provide that leadership to us.
I think the best of us is yet to come. The best of us is like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught me once. He said, there's a force in the universe that in the darkness, a star is being born. And you can't see it, but then that force that's in the darkness will bring that star into view. What that is telling us is we are never bereft of leadership. When leaders fail us, or when good leaders die, that same force that is in the universe that makes new stars and brings them into a view will bring new leadership into view. And new leadership is required among black people because there is a sickness in our leadership. I don't want to put myself apart from them, except that I do that sets me apart. I will not place myself beyond our brothers and sisters in leadership, because none of us have done all that we should or all that we could. But having said that, there is a sickness, a disease in black leadership. Let me give you an example.
Yes, sir.
Mother Coretta Scott King, a woman that sacrificed much for us as the wife of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The children of Mrs. King, willingly or unwillingly, paid a tremendous price. Sometimes we are ungrateful to those who have suffered to make life better for each and every one of us. But when Mother King passed, Harry Belafonte, our esteemed brother, who did so much to help Dr. King, who did so much to back the family, was disinvited to share a word from that platform on behalf of Mother King, because he had made some disparaging remarks against President Bush. And now Bush was coming, Clinton was coming, Carter was coming, white folks were coming. So we could disrespect one of our own because of this sickness in us, that if they don't approve of us, we do not approve of one another. That leadership, that quality of leadership that will only keep their hand in our hand as long as we don't step out of line with white folk. That quality of leadership must be overthrown. And a quality of leadership must arise that will never disrespect and be ungrateful to the masses of black people and never compromise principle because the former slave masters and their children are in the house. Brother Akbar said there's a syndrome among black people. No matter what we say or what we do, we respond like this. I wonder what Massa gonna think about that. That's a Negro syndrome. So black leaders can't speak as forcefully as they could or they should because I wonder what Massa gonna think about that. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Massa giving us money. And Lord, if I say too much, Massa gonna stop giving me money. So I can't talk like I know I should talk. And that's why they, like Nicodemus, they can meet Jesus in the dark, in the back, and say, I'm with you, brother. But when it comes to leading our people, they can only take us so far. And that's why that young cadre of leadership, those stars that are being born in the darkness, they must rise now and come forth without the poison of loving others more than you love yourself and wanting to please others before you please yourself.
Another part right on this. We're going to take a break. But when we come back, Mr. Farrakhan, you just opened up something that we definitely want to discuss. We've also noticed a shift in some of the black evangelicals in terms of how they relate to you. And we'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to Open Line, KISS FM. Welcome back. You're listening to Open Line, 98.7 KISS FM. This is the third answer, Brother Mtume, along with his main man, Brother Bob Pickett. Before we go to our next selection of questions, Minister, we got a great deal of calls. Immediately after the summit in, I think it was in Texas, with Houston, with Brother Tavis Smiley.
In fact, we had Tavis on.
Yeah,
right?
That's, as a matter of fact, it was that Sunday.
It was that Sunday. Right.
And there seemed to be a misunderstanding. I'm going to call it that.
That's putting it nicely.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to be nice. The minister said I ain't going to use my regular words. But we were both, Brother Pickett, actually Brother Slade was here too. I mean, actually taken aback by the type of statements that were being made. And actually you were misquoted. As I went back, as I hadn't seen the footage, and when I saw the footage, it was stated that you said burn the house down when actually you said let the house burn down. But there seems to be a whole issue over the covenant. And as a matter of fact, Brother Belafonte was there, right, and I think it was Brother Cornel West. Now, our phones went off the hook, right, brother?
Oh, it's crazy.
Could you please explain to our audience what this was about?
Yes. First, let me say how honored I am, first, to be in the studio with you all. It's one thing to be on the phone with you, but now to be in the studio. I'm happy to be here. And I just want to say to Ron Daniels, Alambe Braith, and Frederica Bay, and all of the believers, and Minister Kevin, and the ministers that are listening by radio, my great appreciation and thanks to all of you for whatever I am and whatever God has blessed me to do. I could never have done it without the help and support of so many whose names I could not remember all to call, but I want to say to all of you, there is no person in leadership that is anything without those who support that leadership. And oftentimes we focus on an individual when an individual is the servant of the mass. So now, I am in love with Harry Belafonte. He's not only a great artist, a great humanitarian, but he is one of the most brilliant minds that we have today. It is the same with Dr. Cornel West and Tavis. Tavis Smiley, as I remember him as a talk show host, I have always encouraged that brother to come up to leadership. because we are bereft of leadership, and I feel that Tavis has the qualifications to be a great helper of our people. Having said that, Tavis, Cornell, and others had a tremendous investment in the covenant. That is a wonderful book that spells out in detail the horrible condition of black people. And even though there are suggestions of solutions, the fact that the problems are so clear, it also delineates the impotence of us as a people. Having said that, I want the world to know that Farrakhan would never disrespect the work of so many that went into producing this marvelous book. But what I said that was misunderstood, and sometimes when you hear a man and you think emotionally that he's disrespecting your work, you don't really hear him. And I guess the shock of what I was saying caused that kind of disturbance mentally and emotionally, so I was not properly heard. Now, Harry Belafonte told me personally, and I read it in his writings, that 2 weeks before Dr. King was assassinated, they met to plan the move in Memphis. And everyone was joyous except Dr. King. He was in a melancholy state. And Harry Belafonte sat with him and said, "Martin, everyone seems so happy, but you seem melancholy. What's troubling you, Martin?" And he said that Dr. King said, "I fear that I am integrating my people into a burning house." And then Dr. King said he wanted his disciples to be firemen. And I said, no, don't be firemen. Let the house burn. Now, Dr. King did not see a literal fire, but he knew that the house was in fact on fire. The fact that he saw it and wanted his disciples to be firemen said that he didn't start the fire. And the fact that the house is the house of our former slave masters, they would be foolish to burn down their own house. So the question is, how did the fire start? Who started the fire? And what is the fire? So I went to scripture, and this is something because Dr. West is a theologian, and some on that panel were pastors. And most of those who studied the scripture, I want you to remember this. I went to the scripture and the words of Jesus Christ when he said, "I am the light of the world." And I said, the light of the world is our day sun. And if you remember when John was baptizing in the river Jordan, he said, "One is coming after me, whose shoes I am unworthy to unlace, and he's going to baptize you with fire and the Holy Ghost." So Jesus comes and Jesus wishes to be baptized by John, but John knows that this is the one who's coming after him. But he baptizes Jesus with water, but Jesus is a man coming to baptize with fire. Well, what is the fire? The fire is a blazing hot truth that will undermine a house built on falsehood, racism, sexism, materialism, and white supremacy. Dr. King didn't start the fire. God started the fire. And if God has started the fire, there's no man can put the fire out. And that's why Jimmy Baldwin wrote the book Fire Next Time, because this is the day of the judgment of this system of things. Now, is the house on fire? Yes. Every institution built on white supremacy is on fire. Religion is on fire. The church is on fire because Christianity, as it was preached and practiced, was based in white supremacy. But a black theology now has arisen, and a new church is arising. A new politics is arising. A new education is arising. A new social system is coming out of the old. And that's why I quoted from the scripture that Christ said, "Behold, I make all things new. There'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and the former things shall pass away." I didn't mean to upset you to think that I would burn down the house with our children in it, but the house is burning and our children are in it. And every time Cornell speaks, he's not a fireman. He's pouring gas on the fire when he speaks truth to power. Harry Belafonte is not a fireman. Every time he would call Bush the leading terrorist in the world, he's not putting out the fire. He's pouring gas on the fire. And every time Tavis Smiley will hold a forum to elaborate and elucidate on the problems of black people and motivate black people to get up and do something for themselves, then he's not a fireman. He's pouring gas on the fire. But as the fire burns and the ashes come from the burning of the fire, and we too are set on fire, because as the scripture says, we are born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So our spiritual house is also on fire. But from the ashes, he said, I'm going to make a new heaven, a new earth, and you will be a new creature in Christ. That is what Farrakhan was referencing. Now, the last point is, when you make a covenant is a solemn agreement between people who are declaring their integrity to live up to that which is in the covenant. Who is the covenant with? Are the leaders making a covenant with black America that we will never sell them out for friendship and favor with our former slave masters? We have not made that kind of covenant with our people. Somebody needs to put leadership before black America and lay down principles that either we say we will and then be measured by our word, or get out of the way and let the new leadership arise. Black people, I went to the book of Isaiah. You can't make a covenant with black America when you're living a lie yourself. You have made an agreement with hell and a covenant with death. That's the lifestyle that you live in. You're killing yourself. You're killing your people. You're living a lie. So until you can come up out of that and break that covenant with death and with hell, then you can make a new covenant. But the covenant cannot be with black America before you make a covenant with God. If my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. That's the covenant, and God will never violate his word, as these false people have promised us. And lastly, when my brother Tavis held up two papers, one a letter from the leader of the Republican National Committee, one from the leader of the Democratic National Committee. These were words from persons who are a part of the liars, the deceivers, who have promised us. And what I said in my few minutes, you're not dealing with the real powers. That man can give you a promise that he can't fulfill, because there are powers behind him that can undermine anything that he says. Go to the White House and get a promise from the president. He's not the power in America. He's a front man for power. So when you don't know who you're dealing with, You take the lies and deceit of these people into your heart. I am telling you, Black America, don't you believe the false promises of your former slave masters and their children. And that's why the Bible says we war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness that is in high places. And none of us are sitting down with those boys that pull those strings. So any promise made by anyone else, don't pay it any mind.
And we're in the 11 o'clock hour. We want to remind all of you out there, you listen to Open Line on WRKS 98.7 KISS FM. Let's go to the phones, Fatim. We got a lot of phone calls. And let me just remind people, if you would like to join in this discussion with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, give us a call at 1-800-288-KISS. That's 1-800-288-KISS. Fatim.
Okay, and we encourage everybody, if the line is busy, call back because the lines are filled this morning. Okay, let's go out to Princeton and speak with John. Good morning, John. You're on Open Line.
Good morning, gentlemen. Beautiful topic, and thank you, Minister Farrakhan, for coming aboard and giving us the opportunity to speak to you. Given the consideration, and I heard clearly what you were stating about the black leadership, and I agree with you 100% on that. Given the plight of the African Americans and where we look today and the country with all the devastation going on in the world, do we as a people, do you feel, do we as a people have the right to vote those characters in Washington and impeach this president, kick them all out and start all over again, because what we have now does not work. And if we don't do that, this country truly will be destroyed.
Thank you,
All right,
brother.
thanks, John.
President Bush is really taking the country down at a very fast pace. He's born to do this. He can't help himself. He's an empty vessel that was looking for the right idea that he could latch on to. And the neoconservatives who offered this idea of an imperialist America, a global America, they offered it to President Clinton. He turned it down. But President Bush was made for this, so he accepted the ideas of the neoconservatives, and he is now the chief exponent of an idea that is taking the country into ruin. You can vote him out and vote his administration out, but you still won't get the powers that controlled Clinton when he was in, controlled Carter when he was in, controlled Nixon and Reagan when they were in. No, my brother, there has to be a sweep. That's why Christ comes with a government on his shoulders. For unto us a child is born, a son is given, and a government will be upon his shoulders. And he shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Prince of Peace, the Everlasting Father, and of the increase of his government of peace there shall be no end. All of these governments of the world have failed in their stewardship of human beings. So God is coming in this day to take over the rule himself and set up a government that will give the people freedom, justice, equality, and the kind of peace that will make human beings able to live together in brotherhood. So I thank you for your question, but you can vote if you want to and vote this out. But whatever you vote in, believe me, it's the same thing that you just voted out. Because when you sit in that seat, you don't see the electric shocks that come up under it to let the boy sitting in the seat know there's another power here that you better pay attention to. So all of your votes, whether it's for the mayor of the city, whether it's for the city council, whether it's for aldermen or whatnot, these are offices that good can come from, but there is so much evil under this good that if you don't continue to wash your representatives in the pool of Siloam, they too will become corrupt and compromise away the future of our people.
What's this power?
The third,
What's this power? Excuse me a second. I mean, you've alluded to this.
This power is absolutely Satan. That's why in the book of Revelations, I get an awful lot of flack. I get people who call me anti-Semitic. I want to say to the Jewish people of New York City, I have never hated the Jewish people or hated people because of their faith tradition. Don't put me in that ugly bag. But look, if you believe in the scriptures of the Bible, do you want to throw away the book and call the book anti-Semitic? In the book of Revelations, go get it, pick it up now. In the book of Revelations, chapter 2, verse 9, it says, I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but I will make them of the synagogue of Satan. Why is it blasphemy to say that you are a Jew and yet fail to live up to what is required of a Jew? A Jew is not a race. A Jew is not a nationality. A Jew is a state of being in a covenant relationship with God based on obedience to his laws, statutes, and commandments. So when I say that I am a Jew and then I promote the very thing that is against the laws, statutes, and commandments of God, I am not a Jew. I am a satanic force operating under a good name. Everybody that wears a cross is not a Christian. Everybody that says I'm a Christian is not Christ-like. And everybody that says they're a Muslim is not in submission to the will of God. So this hypocrisy that is in religion, that Satan has absolutely taken over the houses of God. So Satan is the boss of government today. Satan is the boss of religion today. Satan is the boss of education today. Satan is the ruler of art and culture today. And this is why the people are steadily going down, down, down into more debauchery, more filth, more ignorance, more rape and robbery and mayhem, because Lucifer has been set loose, but his time is up.
You know, the third answer often has a phrase that he uses, right wing, left wing on the bird is all the same.
Don't matter, it's on the same bird.
Let's go back to the phones for team.
All right, let's go. Let's stay out in New Jersey and let's speak with Ken. Good morning, Ken. You're on open line.
Yes, brothers. Thank you, Brother Minister, for being here today. And also, too, I have to disagree with you about the book, The Covenant, because the book, I read the book, and it still relies too much on the government, okay? I mean, at the end of every chapter, it states, you know, go to your local official, okay? And to me, it's still looking towards the government. And I called in the day after Tavis appeared on the show. That day, rather, when Tavis appeared. And it seemed to me Tavis' anger carried on to the next day about after you appeared. It seemed that, you know, they wasted 20 minutes of time to basically disallow what you had just said at the State of the Black Union. And also, we as a people, I think we have to unite with the African people around the world. Okay, I think we need a membership in the African Union. Okay, I think, you know, African Americans deserve a right, a voice to speak on an international level. We have to take that voice to the African Union and let it speak for us, and let other African leaders, okay, help us in our cause here. And also, too, the 8th Pan-African Congress is in Harare, Zimbabwe this year in October. Will you be attending? And do you suggest that we attend?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. No, I'm in total agreement with you. See, that's the weakness of the book. The covenant spells out clearly our condition, but it also spells out our impotence because we're relying on the same people that have deceived us all along. And that's why I say we have to make a covenant with God, because he never breaks his promise. If we rely on God and rely on the best within ourselves, then we can solve this problem. Now, dear brother, yes, I have been to the African Union. I was there when it was being formed, and I hope to we've pressed them for observer status with the African Union, and I think we will be there with our brothers and sisters in Africa when they have their next meeting, hopefully sometime in July. I would advise you, yes, go to Harare. It's time to stand by President Mugabe. And it's a wonderful thing that the 8th Pan-African Congress will be held there because he's under fire. Remember, Mugabe was the darling of the Commonwealth nations as long as he let white folk keep the land. But when they impressed upon him, look, President Mugabe, you and Joshua Nkomo, you fought to take the land back because the land belongs to the people. And just before he was to win and take over, they invited him to London, and they made a deal. And in that deal, they were going to buy back the land of the whites, and then they reneged on their promise. And then after 20 years or so, the soldiers came and said, look, man, this is not what we fought for. So he began to take the land away from the whites and reapportion it to the blacks, and that's when the Commonwealth got on him, and now he's the bad boy, and they're working to destroy that man. So all the support we can give to Brother Mugabe is what we should do. Thank you for your question.
Mr. Farrakhan, when we come back after this break, I want to follow up on that same question about our relationship to Africa and ask you about the Sudan and the Darfur issue. You're listening to Open Line. We're with Minister Louis Farrakhan. Stay tuned. Call up people. Let them know he's on the air. We'll be right back. What's your take on what's going on in Sudan and the atrocity that's occurring in Darfur, and the fact that the black community here and the black leadership seems not to be embracing that issue?
First, my brother, when we were called Negroes, we did not have an international presence. The Honorable Marcus Garvey tried to give us an international presence. And of course, he was very successful, but the government feared an international presence. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad single-handedly turned us from Negroes to accepting ourselves no matter what shade of color we were, due to the Willie Lynch syndrome and the going in and out of our women by our former slave masters and their children that gave us all these different shades, and then they divided us by these shades. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked us to refer to ourselves as the black man, the original people of the earth. And when we saw ourselves as black people, then every person of color on the earth, we identified with them. So in the 60s, nothing could happen on the African continent that black people in America were not concerned with. Nothing could happen in the Caribbean or in Brazil or in Central America or in the islands of the Pacific, where black people were concerned, that we didn't feel them, because a nervous system was being created for black people, that we felt the pain of one another wherever we were on the earth. But after Malcolm was assassinated and Martin was assassinated and Elijah Muhammad was gone, notice the shift in language. We were no longer black. In New York City, there were several black shows. There was Black News. Was there Positively Black? Mm-hmm. There was the national program with Tony Brown called Black Journal.
Right.
After the death of these giants, now the wise people said, let's change the language so we can change their focus and give them a new understanding of who they are. So subtly, there was no more Black News, no more Positively Black. Black Journal became Tony's Journal. And all over America, wherever black was describing that program, Black Star in Baltimore, that left. And then the new language was the minority, the disadvantaged. Then came African American. And what was happening is a severing of the nervous system that black had made, tying us to the struggle of black people all over the world. So now there can be a Darfur. Who cares? That's not us. There can be a Rwanda and Burundi. Who cares? That's not us. So we don't feel suffering until there's a Katrina. Oh, that's us. But what's going on in Haiti, that's not us. What's going on in Brazil, in Costa Rica, in Colombia, in Nicaragua, in Guatemala, that is not us. So the language shift. Now let's go to Darfur. If you notice, on the mall, 95% of those who were present were Caucasian. I'm not going to denigrate their sensitivity to suffering, but the reason that blacks were not there is because the blacks who could make something happen were never invited. It's not that black people don't care about Darfur, but Darfur, on the scale of suffering in the world, pales. Because now I heard there were 180,000 dead, from that to 400,000, okay? 2 million displaced. But in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 3.5 million have died. No talk. In northern Uganda, with the Lord's Resistance Army and the walking at night for the children trying to run away so that they would not be kidnapped and made to fight against the government in Kampala. No talk. Why Sudan? For the last 15 years, Sudan has been on the agenda for regime change. Regime change because Sudan housed Palestinian resistance fighters. Sudan housed Osama bin Laden and put him out. But Sudan is an Islamist regime that is against the state of Israel. Now let's stop there for a moment. See, now they said, well, these are some Arabs in the Sudan enslaving Africans. So naturally, this is the language of Arabs enslaving Africans. This is so clever, and the media pushes that so that there would come a natural hatred of blacks for Arabs, so that Arabs look like the real culprits here. Well, you don't know this, but I and my international representative, Akbar Muhammad, who's in the studio with me, who I want to speak on this in just a few moments, he and I were together on a peace mission. Listen to me carefully now. How many years ago was that, Brother Akbar? Over 10 years ago, wasn't it?
It was 1994.
1994, 12 years ago. Now, I went to Ghana and spoke with then President Jerry John Rawlings. And Rawlings said, if you want to help ease the crisis, get in touch with Kenneth Kaunda, the former president of Zambia. We got in touch with Kenneth Kaunda, and he said he would accompany us. And so we went to Kenya and met with President Arap Moi, who at that time was over that group of nations that were working for peace. What is it?
IGAD.
IGAD, E-G-A-D. So when we met with President Moi, he sent us to Uganda, where we met with President Museveni. But the most important meeting was a meeting with Brother John Garang, who for 20 years was fighting the government in Khartoum. Now, why was there a fight? Was it over slavery? Akbar, you were with me. At no time during our talk with John Garang, which was 4 hours in length, was there ever a mention of slavery.
Right, never mentioned.
But when I mentioned the word justice, then John Garang's wife broke down and cried and said that I was the only person who came that talked about justice. Now, what was the injustice? The Arabs have mixed their blood with the Africans that live in the north. They are Arabized and Islamic. And the same racist poison that has poisoned the bloodstream of Islam has made the Arab North feel superior to the Christian animist African South. The South is black, 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 so black till there's blue in their color. So when you have, like the enemy has done to us, when you're lighter, you think you're better than your black brother or sister. And in New Orleans, when I just left there, they told me about the brown bag, that if you walked in a place and you couldn't pass the brown bag test, meaning your color was darker than the bag that you carry your liquor in, you couldn't go in certain places. And in Washington, D.C., y'all know that there was an elitist attitude among light-skinned black people against dark-skinned black people. The same game that the enemy has played here and in Africa. Now he's dominating that scene now in Sudan. Now look at the Sudan. It's the largest landmass country, I think.
That's right.
On the African continent. If it were fully developed, it could feed all of Africa. In the south, there's an abundance of oil. And if you remember in Nigeria, in the eastern part of Nigeria, they wanted to break that part off years ago and call it Biafra. And it ignited a civil war. And the civil war was to unite that which gave them power, because there was a regime in Lagos that the government of America and Britain did not like. Now, what you got in the West, Brother Akbar, tell the audience, because I sent Brother Akbar there to look into the situation in Darfur, and James Mtume went himself. Tell them about the Janjaweed, tell them about the government, tell them about the farmers, tell them about the herders, tell them what is really happening on the ground there, and then we'll come back to why no black people were there on that mall.
Yes, Brother Minister, with your permission, first, thank you very much. I'd like to say to the audience, you know, we have a saying, when there's darkness, stand still. And most black people in America did not participate because the cloud that was around it that they really didn't understand. And then they were not invited in mass. They tried to get some to come. So the standing still is because they've heard so many different things. One of the things I want to start off where the minister left off at, when that peace accord was signed in the South, immediately this conflict broke out in the West. Now, until the last 5 days, most people in America knew nothing about the rebel group that started all of this. They had a peace accord in Abuja. The Sudanese government said that they would sign. The rebels first resisted. Bush sent the deputy secretary of state there to force the rebels. Now, how could you force the rebels to sign unless you got some clout with them, or were you supplying them with money and weapons and so forth, and you told them that this is what you have to do at that time? But the tragedy is that if you look at the government in Khartoum, now, whenever we look at the world and you talk about a government, Brother Minister, if you talked about Iraq during the time of Saddam Hussein, they'd show his picture. If you talked about Syria, they would show Assad. If you talked about Saudi Arabia today, they would show King Abdullah. If you talk about Egypt, they would show Mubarak. They've talked about the Sudan, but if I asked an audience across this country, what does the president of the Sudan look like? Most people do not know. He just went to Iran to meet with the leader of Iran, and very little information showing him in a picture with him, because he is as black as Akbar or either blacker. So he doesn't fit the script of the Arab who's killing Africans. Last week, the Washington Post published the 5 facts about Darfur. One of them on there that was blaring, and Mtume, you can bear witness to this, is that all of the people are black. So if you talk about Arabs killing Africans, and Mtume, you went into a room when you were there. I went into the same room, and the man said, would the Arab tribe leaders stand up, that include the ones that are called Janjaweed? And when they stood up, they were all black. He said, now will the African tribes stand up? And they were all black. And so everybody, we looked at each other, because the picture in America is that these white Arabs are killing Africans. And the brother said clearly, what makes them the Arabs, they only speak Arabic, and they're herders, or you would call nomads. They do herding. what makes them Africans is they speak an African language and Arabic. They're all Muslims. And so they've had this clash for 500 years. This conflict with the rebels exacerbated it because the government did go in and form a militia. And this militia was not to make people suffer in murder and rape, but it was to root out the rebels who had taken shelter among the villages and the people. And this picture is not seen in America.
Yeah, that's a good history lesson.
Well, if I could just finish that point. You see, when you see Senator Tom Lantos leading the march on the Sudanese embassy, when you see Elie Wiesel, these are Zionists. These are pro-Israeli Zionists. Why are they leading the march? Do you really think that they have compassion for what is going on in Darfur? See, human suffering is human suffering. Don't tell me you have compassion for the blacks that are suffering in Darfur and you got Palestinians suffering under your nose and you don't care nothing about that? Come on. If there's 3.5 million dying in the Congo, you say nothing about that? The people that are dying in Uganda, you say nothing about that? No. Then what is the motive sitting up under this? This is what black people have to look at. It is that there's oil in the West, there's gold, there's uranium, and there's a 500-year fight. Like the early plains, you know, if I was a cattle rancher, you know, and you were a sheep herder, and we didn't like the sheep herders, and there's a fight between the cattle ranchers, the sheep herders. Then the railroad comes in, and they start taking the land. So all these boys fighting each other in early American history. This is what's going on in Darfur, and the mistake that the government made. But sincere, they saw these herders that were going to fight against the rebels, and they armed them. But then that 500-year-old hatred that's in them took precedence over rooting out the rebels, and the massacre began and so forth. So what I say to black people, you know, when the former slave masters who didn't care about lynching, who didn't care about our suffering, who don't care about what happened in Katrina, don't you be deceived that they care about what's happening over there and they don't care what's happening to us here. If you can promote black people calling black women bitches and whores and have no thought about that, you can promote gangster life, guns and drugs, and you have no thought about that, yet the black community is dying as we speak. How in the hell can I think you're concerned about Darfur when we are dying in Harlem and in Brooklyn and the south side of Chicago? Stop it. Black people, wake up to the deceit. We are not there because we were not invited, and that was not our party.
We're going to take a quick break.
Yeah, on that note, we're going to take a real quick break, too.
Yes.
And we're going to come back with more of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Stay with us. You're listening to Open Line.
Welcome back. We're in our final segment here, Brother Pickett.
Yes,
Brother
indeed.
Fatim.
Gone by quickly, too.
It's been a wonderful, wonderful morning going into an afternoon. But right now, we're going to let the phones carry this out as you can address your questions to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Brother Fatim?
Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to go to line 3. We have Sanatir. Is that the correct way of pronouncing your name?
Sister Sanatari.
Sanatari. Excuse me. Good morning. You're on Open Line.
All right,
Good morning.
Sanatari, what's your question for the minister?
First of all, I would like to say Assalamu alaikum, Brother Minister.
Wa alaikum salam, sister.
And my question is, me being a sister in the Nation of Islam, and we know that we have the MGT class, and with the plight of our sisters here in America today, I want to know what can you say to the sisters to kind of motivate them, so to say, to better ourselves?
Yes.
We know that we have the MGT, but for our sisters out there that we speak with every day, I wanted you to say something to them
Thank you, sister. Thank
kind
you.
of help them along.
Thank you.
you.
To our sisters who are listening, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us, where there are no decent women, there are no decent men, for the black woman is the mother of civilization. You don't judge the civilization by the men. You judge civilization and the depth of that civilization, the greatness of that civilization by the woman. When you have women that are denied education, when you have women that are denied the right to express the greatness that God has put within them, then when you suppress and oppress women, you suppress and oppress yourself. When you exalt a woman, you exalt a nation. You know, when they talk about these Muslims who are martyrs, they said, boy, these Muslims want to die because they're going to paradise and there'll be 70 virgins. And these people want to die to get to those virgins. But my dear brothers and sisters, look, the Bible teaches that a virtuous woman is more priceless than silver and gold. The Quran is giving us a picture of paradise. A man surrounded by 70 virgins. The number 7 means infinity. When you are surrounded by virgins, you are surrounded by virtuous women. And when you're surrounded by virgins, then there is no adultery, there's no fornication, so you're in a heavenly state because the women are honored and respected and their virtue is honored and respected. That's not talking about dying to see that kind of life. But if we lived on this earth when this world is removed and the kingdom of God is established, you will see virgins, you will see virtuous women, you will see men who love and respect their women, you will see highly educated, motivated women, and then you will know, as the Bible says, a wise child maketh a glad father, but a foolish child is the heaviness of its mother. So rise up, black women. Come away from the foolishness of the television and immerse yourself in seeking knowledge. For the greater you are, the greater will be what you produce from your womb. May God bless you.
Okay, let's go to East Harlem and speak with Melvin. Good morning, Melvin. You're on open line.
Well, good morning, brothers. And salam alaikum to the minister.
Wa alaikum salam, dear brother.
Yes, sir. First of all, I would just like to start by saying that I thank Almighty Allah for his coming in the person of Master Fard Muhammad and for raising up from among us a divine leader, teacher, and guide in the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I thank both of them for you and for the members and believers of the nation. And I say that, believing that, even though I'm not a registered Muslim. But, sir, my question is to you is the dilemma that I'm facing in my thinking now in regards to, immigration. Not too long ago, Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Jackson went to Mexico to confront President Fox on his statement that they were coming here and they were doing jobs that even, and I put that in quotes, that even blacks won't do.
I'm not a defender of Vicente Fox, but see, he knows, looking from the outside, that black people are considered the permanent underclass in the United States of America. This is a man looking at the racial situation in America from the outside.
Yes,
and, you know, Reverend Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson or Bruce Gordon or Louis Farrakhan, we are not the rule, we are like the exception. So when you look at the masses of black people, he says, well, my people are taking jobs that even the permanent underclass will refuse to accept. Now, none of us will go out in the hot sun and pick the fruits and vegetables that the Mexicans wish to do. They're great landscapers, but they are taking jobs that we would love to do. And if you go all across America, you see road construction going on. Very few blacks are on those jobs, but the construction people are hiring Mexicans. In the house building boom, we would love to be a part of that, but they hire Mexicans because we now became part of the union. And as part of the union, that meant that we would get higher salary and wage considerations. My dear, dear brothers and sisters, Pharaoh has let you go. But it is you that don't want to go. Years ago, it was Hattie McDaniel's type that was the maid, the butler, and all of that. You go now, go see the movie Sentinel. When the rich man's house is open, it's a fat Mexican woman, it's a fat Latino that's the butler. We are no longer present. And I'm telling you, Pharaoh has dropped you. So in my conclusion, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, when the sea takes a body down and destroys it, it gives that body up to the surface so that the loved ones may claim that body. And if no one claims that body, then the sea destroys it. White folk have let us go, except for the few that are in corporate America, the few that can fit in this society. But the sea now has given us up, like Pharaoh said, all right, Moses, take your people and go. And when Moses was getting ready to take them, Pharaoh had a new thought. He said, no, send the army and kill them. And that's what's going on right now. As we speak, they've let you go. The sea has given you up, but you are not claiming yourself, and it looked like nobody is claiming you, so the sea is taking us down, and the government has said, wipe them out. We are on a death march right now.
Minister Farrakhan, we have run out of time.
Well, thank you.
Well, actually, you never run out of time with you. Time has just elapsed now.
Right.
We're gonna go. They got to go into the next show. But
we
we'd
want
like
to
to thank you
very
so
much.
And we look forward to doing this again.
One more time.
Thank you,
Thank
Kiss
you very
FM.
much.
Thank
Many
you.
times as we can.
If you have any questions, of course, and comments on today's show, you can address them to Open Line, care of Kiss FM, 395 Hudson Street, New York, 10014.